ensemble, but with the class that you teach, that you are teaching global music, in your view, what value or contribution does that ensemble bring to your students, the program, and even the larger institution?
Most wonderful spirit, most precious spirit, the happiest spirit of all spirits, which was given free of charge by the Creator to everyone before we are born. Actually, when we say we are teaching the music students, we are not really teaching them, but we are just helping them to develop what they already have there. You see? So to develop that spirit, we have to do away with shyness. You don't have to be shy. You have to try and do everything you think is possible. Don't be, as far as music is concerned, you shouldn't be afraid of, one shouldn't be afraid of making a mistake. Just go into it. Try it. If there is a mistake, you will be corrected and you will never forget the right answer. So music is something which makes the whole world a happy place to stay.
Are brought up in this country, in the United States, learning how to read music. And by the time we're in middle school, if we don't know how to read music, there are no music classes for us in middle school or high school. And that would be at least 80 or 85% of our students. Whereas in Ghana, when I go there and they say, what do you do for a living? I say, I'm a musician. They say, no, what do you do for work? Because everybody there is a musician, and everybody drums and sings and dances from the time they're born till the time they die. And they do it together, and it builds community, and it's a shining example of music at its best, connective power. Everyone loves music. And even though in this country we train music making out of people, we can't train the love of music out of people. Everyone continues to love music and wishes they could sing better or play better, or oh, you're a musician. Oh, I can't carry a tune. I can't keep a beat. And it's nonsense. I can't believe people think that, because music is the most natural human activity. Everybody does it around the entire world. And so does all of nature. But the problem with our American music education system, which I know this is on topic with the rest of your questions, so, and it does affect, it does sort of answer the question that you started with, but what brings value to the Montclair State students is that they are learning this new perspective of approaching music, of learning music, and it's opening their ears, because the American music training system has you take in music through your eyes. You have to read the notes and then try to hear what you're making. But your eyes are not your primary organ of musical acquisition. Your ears are.
That's true.
And your body is, but not your eyes. Eyes can help. Eyes can amplify, like we're having a conversation. And if I weren't looking at you, you wouldn't feel like, oh, he's paying attention or he's listening to me. But if I'm staring at you, it amplifies our connection. It tightens our connection. It amplifies what you hear and what I hear from you. And I'm gaining by looking at you. I'm watching you nod and I'm watching you affirm. The same is true in music. If I'm playing music and you're playing music and I have this in front of my face and you have that in front of your face, we can't see each other.
Well, I suppose it all really centers around what it brought to me when I was exposed to it, which was not in my own program. I went to a friend's recital at another university, and I wanted everything that she was experiencing. I felt I had my eyes opened to, she was a white woman from the US, but she had gone to Ghana. This was back in 1990. before I met Kathy even, and half of her recital was ensemble music that she had learned, and she was studying with Abraham Edzenia at Wesleyan. And I thought, what is this? What is that? And it felt to me, to answer your question, what does it offer? It offered me a more balanced view of the world around me. And that was just one culture, one southeast corner of the culture, right? Because she was mostly doing Ewe music. And I suppose that is when my brain first latched on to that I was being hoodwinked or brainwashed as to what my music degree should reflect. And it caused a lot of tension for me. And so as soon as I was in my own classroom, I started to model it after, seeking. And so I suppose now that I'm at a university, I still see that same disparity. I see people using the same textbooks, they're programming the same music, they're approaching things, we could sing each other's repertoire. And so as much or more than ever, we need to make the point that Western European music is but one genre among many.
Yeah.
And I imagine you may be asking this anyway, but where I see that sometimes a music ensemble that focuses on one culture falls prey to the same problem that many symphonic bands fall prey to, or orchestras, which is all focused in one place.
Yeah.
And as you also, I'm sure, have seen, so many white people like myself claim to be able to lead these ensembles to which, we've been outsiders to. And then we claim that as our area of expertise or our knowledge. And that's really complicated to me, which I suppose also informs why I do a more comparative approach. So we go in depth over here, and then we go in depth over here, or I do an ensemble based on following a diaspora. So we see how music develops. So I feel like it brings a much needed wake-up call. Never loud enough. And it's never enough. It's never enough, because one ensemble focusing on one culture cannot possibly tip the scales. And yet that seems to be the model we have. So
Yeah, I mean,
my students normally, there's so much. I'm trying to figure out how to kind of put this, because my students, they love my classes, they love the ensemble class, because of the exposure that they get to firsthand from me regarding Africa or Ghanaian culture. And it increases their talent, it enhances their knowledge on Africa, and it gives them some challenges to understand music in its context from me, and they like to share, so they go to other people, other students, and talk to them about music. So they only don't learn the cultural component of that, but they also help promote the ensemble. And I will also say that part of the value will be that they relate the ensemble to their family circles. They think of it as a family, because anytime we meet, it's more like a family time, and we talk about things. And I normally try to explain rhythms and whatever we do, however complex the rhythms are, we relate it to life challenges, so that they're not only just learning musical component of it, but then how we deal with challenges, how you cope with situations in case of any emergency, or if you're frustrated in life. So we use rhythm to reinterpret or reintegrate it into different component of that?
Of music students, so they need to take a certain number of ensembles to fulfill their degree requirements. And so I think what this ensemble offers, first of all, it's the only non-Western music ensemble that we have for the students to join. So I think it gives them some opportunities to step outside their own music culture and experience music in a different way. It's also an unauditioned group, which means that students can come in without an audition and basically be performing and learning things on an instrument that's not their major instrument. Mm-hmm. And all the students drum and dance and sing. So I think the value for them is that they get to be beginners. You know, I find a lot of students are quite anxious about their music studies and about being really good at their instrument. And I think that this gives them an opportunity to kind of relax and enjoy music and enjoy learning music, learning something new. Because it's participatory in nature, we value their participation over being just a really sort of stellar drummer or dancer. So the energy from the ensemble comes from that kind of experience, which I think impacts the way that they sort of connect with each other socially and in the department. And I think it brings sort of just a level of kind of comfort on stage and comfort with doing something new. I think it brings that to their studies a little bit. So those are some of the benefits that I think for the students. In terms of our program, I think it's sort of what I've already discussed, and just that it's just an opportunity for students to have musical experience outside of their own music culture and or their primary instrument. And it's something that is multidisciplinary. So the students are all asked to drum and dance and sing. So they really get an understanding of the integration of those elements and how that kind of works together. I think that it is a really valuable ensemble for the university, but I don't know that the university knows that. So I think, you know, like probably many other music programs, we're not that well known throughout the rest of the university. And that's something that I think would be really beneficial because it's something that I think other students in other programs would value as a participatory experience, but also as a means to kind of connect the dots between some of the other like social sciences, African studies, global politics, like some of these other courses. It would be really interesting to have students participate in this ensemble, but we're not quite there yet. So it has fluctuated, but I've always had a pretty good number of students. I think because students have to take a certain number of credits, then sometimes they will just do like a couple of terms with me and then be in some other ones. But for the most part, a lot of students in the West African Rhythm Ensemble stay for quite a while, partly because of the camaraderie and the community that we build. You know, I mentioned the idea of the hierarchical structure, and I think the non-hierarchical structure of the drumming and the dancing and the singing also is reflected in the way that people learn. So there's a lot of mentoring that goes on. And I think as the students get familiar with the material, they like to in turn kind of talk to the younger students about that. So I think a lot of the students stay. So I generally have around 20 students in the ensemble. I think like for our music students, it's a credit for the music students, but it's not a credit for anyone else in the university. And I think that's what would make a big change if we could do that to allow other students to get credit. But right now it's only for music students. So and generally, I think that sometimes people might be afraid to be participating just because they're not used to dancing, or it's just something that's unfamiliar. But because I also teach this in the rhythm class, that is a required course for all the music students, I think they get a taste of it, and then they can think, oh, well, it's not as scary as I thought it would be, or I'm better at this than I thought, or whatever it is. So I think that way it actually helps that they have a bit of an introduction to it in a class.
I totally understand, because most of the
musicianship, taught in music programs are mostly Western. And so
Mhm.
then when you have to like reorient yourself and learn another music, it's quite hard. And
Yeah.
even for us, a lot of us were quite terrified to do the traditional music because we're so used to classical music,
That's right.
And so it's like you now have to reprogram it, the syncopation, and there's just a lot happening in Ghanaian music. So it can be a bit intimidating. But like you said, the ensemble creates that communal feeling.
Yeah.
You don't feel pressured. It's like, oh, we're all helping each other. We are all learning from the start.
I think that's the key because,
Yeah.
so many of the students I find expect to be perfect at things, or they don't want to do it, or they want to be able to get it right away.
Mhm.
And this is something that takes time. And so once they realize that they don't have to know everything right away, they can kind of build layers as they go and get better at it
Yeah.
through repetition. I think it makes a really big difference for them.
It is. I mean,
It is probably the most inviting ensemble that we have.
Yeah.
And we're going to actually have our final kind of performance, if you want to call it a performance, but display, experience, whatever, outside this afternoon at 4:00. And as soon as the drums begin, and as soon as the singing starts, and as soon as the dancing starts, people kind of just gravitate very naturally to it. And all of a sudden they're drumming and they're singing and they're dancing along with us, and they've had no connection to the ensemble at all prior to just that sound of the drum kind of drawing them in.
Yeah.
And so because of that, because of the way that this music tends to move in time and in space and in the environment of which it sits, it calls it calls people to join in. And because of that, it is the most welcoming, it is the most inclusive, it is the most celebratory in that way, even when we're, say, engaging in like a warrior song dance. It's still very celebratory. There's something about it that again asks people to be with us as we're doing this. And I know that's indicative of the music itself, but because it is that way naturally, it exists that way here. We have students in the ensemble, of course, who are music majors, music ed majors, music therapy majors, music performance majors, music composition majors, but we also have theater and dance majors. We also have English language arts majors. We also have had business majors who've just decided, that sounds really interesting. I want to do that, but I don't know anything about music. And it's not a barrier. It's always, you're all welcome. Please join us. Please come drum, sing, and dance with us. And so there's something that's very unique about that kind of an ethos, especially at a music school. So very often you have to have particular skills to join particular ensembles. You have to have particular levels of expertise to join ensembles. And this doesn't discriminate in any way, shape, or form. And whatever you are is welcome. And by whatever you are, I mean musically and spiritually and socially. It's just very, very inclusive in that way. And so it acts very inclusively here on campus.
My approach is community oriented. Okay. So I'll be very explicit with this rather than abstract and broad and vague. I sometimes have my students perform for the Bulgarian or Turkish communities.
Wow.
And proves to be beneficial for the communities as well as the students.
Yeah.
So what this does is that it creates appreciation for other cultures and removes barriers that impede understanding. It also helps build an awareness of cultural differences. So going back, I'm just going to add a little more here. The long-standing emphasis on world music ensembles at York elevates the status of the department and the university because it illustrates the institution's respect for diversity, difference, intensified cultural contact, intercultural collaboration, and a distancing from the Eurocentric approach and methodologies to teaching music.